Looks great, doesn't it? Welcome to the MotoVlog featuring the 2025 BMW F900 XR in the stunning red-blue-white color combination. What else would you expect from BMW? Right then, let's take a look at how it performs and what's new, and all of that in the beautiful surroundings of the Garraf Natural Park near Barcelona. Let's go! There she is already purring. Off we go. These are basically my very first meters on the new F900 XR. So maybe let's quickly talk about that first, the key updates. Oh, there are the guys, hey there! Right, the key updates for 2025. The engine still has 895 cc, it's a parallel twin, 105 horsepower, and promises plenty of punch from the mid-range and even from slightly lower revs. But the bigger changes have come in the electronics department. In addition to the previously available road and rain riding modes, we now also get dynamic mode as standard. There are also lean angle sensitive assistance systems on board. Dynamic traction control, cornering ABS, and an engine drag torque control system now all come as standard on the XR. Something else worth mentioning, the front suspension has been revised. We now get a 43mm upside down fork that's adjustable, and at the rear there's also ESA on board. And the final thing to point out is a slight redesign at the front. Not just the styling, but also the wind protection has been improved a bit with the aim of reducing helmet buffeting. Now, I won't be hitting motorway speeds on these narrow roads, but let's talk about how the 2025 XR actually feels to ride. First off, the riding position feels very close to the handlebars. You can tell that the XR, in my view, feels like a bike that might have been developed starting from a naked bike concept. It still feels super agile, very much like a naked bike. Yeah, we've got 17-inch wheels, so it's not a crossover or anything like that, more like a sport tourer or a tall-legged sport tourer, depending on what you want to call it, properly set up for road riding. And this forward biased riding position actually helps if you want to ride a bit more spiritedly. But what I also wanted to say is that even when you're just cruising, it's nice and comfortable. You can stay upright thanks to how close the handlebars are. Your arms are slightly bent and the knee angle, I'd say it's on the sportier side compared to typical touring bikes, but if you're coming from a naked bike or a sport bike, then it doesn't feel sharp at all. Still, you do notice there's a touch of sporty intent in the XR. As you start shifting through the gears, this bike's equipped with both the comfort package and the dynamic package. That brings the price to around 14,300 euros in Germany, just a bit over. In Austria, we're looking at well over 15,000 euros. With those two packages, the dynamic package and the comfort package, you get a nice upgrade in both sporty and touring features, cruise control, quick shifter and pro riding modes. I think it's a solid step up, especially the quick shifter. It works incredibly smoothly. Even with the throttle slightly open, I can shift up or down. But something you do notice when riding more gently is that the gear changes go through very smoothly, really nicely done. That said, the feeling at the gear lever is, I describe it as a bit doughy. At first there's nothing, then once you overcome this soft resistance with your foot, the shift itself clicks in quite cleanly. What we'll find though, and I won't do this while heading downhill, so I'll look for a spot to turn around, is that when you ride more aggressively and rev the engine higher, the feel at the gear lever changes. It becomes firmer, a bit more wooden, a bit sharper. So yeah, the character of the gearbox kind of shifts a little. All in all, the quick shifter is generally very user-friendly. It's just that feel at the lever, that's not entirely my thing. That again supports the idea that it has its roots more in the naked bike category. I feel like it suits a hanging or pulling riding style more than a pushing one. Thing is, it's fitted with Conti Road Attack 4 tires, and if you try to ride with a more pressing style, it constantly needs counter pressure. The steering behavior isn't completely neutral, and like here, I really have to apply pressure with the inside hand or pull with the outside one to get it turning. It's not extreme, you can still ride it like that, but it's not the most natural or harmonious way to handle it in the long run if you're always fighting the bars. I know there are bikes where this is way more noticeable and riders used to that might not mind, but there are also bikes, even in the crossover class, that respond more easily to a pushing style. On the flip side, if you lean in a bit, the front wheel actually starts to follow into the curve on its own as soon as the bike is in a lean. So if you move your upper body forward and use your weight to steer, it all works really well and you don't need to do much with the bars at all. I also really like how the twin cylinder delivers its power. What also stands out is that BMW's revised the throttle response in the dynamic mode, which is now standard. It's become even more direct, and honestly, I'm not sure that's something I personally need. The engine already pulls really well in the mid-range. You can easily get going at a good pace. But when I switch to dynamic mode, the power delivery does feel sportier, which is nice. But when you want to roll on the throttle mid-corner, especially in tighter bends, there's this initial jolt, almost like a fake engine braking effect, and it's hard to smooth it out in this sharper dynamic mode. And that's just not really my thing. And especially when you're leaned over more right at the apex, I want to roll on the throttle as smoothly as possible and let the power come in gently. But the sharper throttle response just makes that harder. I don't need that extra demand. Thankfully, I've just set up the Dynamic Pro mode so that it uses the throttle mapping from road mode. You do lose a bit of punch at lower revs, but in return you get much more precise control. And for me, that was the best combination. Now, a quick word on the suspension, especially since we've just hit a few bumps. I'd say the suspension is on the firmer side, but not overly stiff. Up front, it does dive a bit when you brake hard, but in return you get good feedback. I think the front end gives you really clear input about how much lean you've got and how much more you can go. At the rear, the ESA, well, it's no longer BMW's best electronically controlled suspension system. And especially when riding sportily, now and then, the rear can't quite iron out those undulations and gives a bit of a bounce. But that's really only when you're pushing through corners quite hard. For a still spirited, motivated riding style, the performance is actually pretty solid. And when you're just cruising over little bumps, you can still feel them, and the suspension tuning lets those through slightly more. It's not a magic carpet ride, of course, but you can tell they've tuned it so that you get a good sense of the road, especially with small imperfections. But on longer waves or smoother undulations, it does a good job soaking those up. And if I switch to something more relaxed, like road mode, it actually becomes quite comfortable. This bike definitely gives the impression that it's up for some proper touring. I've even had a quick stint on the motorway. Adjustable windscreen, always a plus, but with my 1.85 meters, it's not quite perfect. The wind doesn't cleanly pass over me. Instead, I get some light turbulence on the sides and top. Riders shorter than 1.85, say under 1.80, probably won't have much of an issue there. I think for a first impression, to sum it up, it's got good, agile handling, upgraded electronics, a well-functioning quick shifter, though the feel at the lever isn't quite to my taste. Same with the steering behavior. Depending on your riding style, it can be easy and effortless or a bit more demanding. So I'd say this bike will feel most at home with riders coming from the naked or sport bike segment. Those coming from adventure tourers might have to adjust their style a bit or get used to the fact that you have to counter steer more actively in the bends. And the engine? Still an absolute blast. I think in 2025, especially with the introduction of the F900 already last year, this parallel twin from BMW has taken a big step forward again. In terms of sportiness, in how willing it is to pull through the rev range and deliver torque, in how it pushes you forward, it's definitely leveled up, and now it's even more fun to ride, at least for me. And I hope you've had a bit of fun too with this quick summary. Let's shut it off for a second. We'll do a quick walk around. It's a good looking machine too, though I'm still not quite sure how I feel about those red rims. But other than that, definitely not an ugly bike. What do you reckon? What's your take on the F900 XR? Drop it in the comments. And now there's only one thing left to say. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time. Take care and see you soon.